Welcome, early American literature friends. This video should guide you through the reading and assignment schedule for this course. This is really the week-to-week document that will guide you when you think on a Wednesday night or a Sunday night or something like that. What am I supposed to do this week? Am I caught up? Am I behind? This is what you can look at, and it will let you know what we're supposed to cover, the basic structure, what you need to, the readings you need to be caught up with, those kinds of things. And it's broken down day by day. In a summer class, every day is 2 days of a regular semester, so you need to, on a basic level, it's useful to think about it that way. Every day is 2 regular semester, like fall semester, spring semester days. So, and I've kind of broken it down even that way in the reading and assignment schedule. You can see on June 5th, you have the introduction to the course, the timeline and list of things. That will be in the first video for this week. And then you have John Smith. The first reading for this course, where I start this course, is John Smith from General History of Virginia, New England, and the Summer Isles. You are probably familiar with John Smith from like Disney, Pocahontas, those kinds of things. John Smith, who helped found the Jamestown colony in Virginia, the first permanent colony in North America. So we're going to start there with John Smith's description of his attempts to explore several of the rivers around Jamestown, and then his capture and him being held prisoner for 6 or 7 weeks. And then we'll end with his trade back to the Jamestown colony. So the first thing we're going to read are those famous sections from General History of Virginia, New England, and the Summer Isles, with Smith attempting to explore that area up the rivers there, the Chickahominy River in Virginia, his capture by the local tribe there, and then his time as being held captive, including the famous Pocahontas saves him scene. And then the last part of what we're going to read from Smith is him returning back to the Jamestown colony. We're going to read William Bradford of Plymouth Plantation for June 7th. I've got this course mostly broken down into like a Monday, Wednesday class, like it's a regular semester. You don't have to adhere to those themes, adhere to that timeline that strictly. The only time that'll really be strict is when we have exams, which we'll get to in just a second. We'll deal with William Bradford's of Plymouth Plantation. Bradford was the governor of Plymouth Plantation several different times. The Plymouth Rock and the Puritans, the first Thanksgiving. We're going to read several sections from Bradford's diary, beginning with the colonists landing at Plymouth, but we'll also deal with a couple of his description of the first winter where so many of them starved. Also, the Pequot War, where they fought with the local Native American tribe. And then we will spend what would be 3 normal semester class days reading Mary Rowlandson's narrative of the captivity and restoration of Mary Rowlandson. Mary Rowlandson lived on the frontier of Massachusetts in the late 1600s. She was captured during King Philip's War, which is the last major war between the settlers and the Native Americans in New England. She was held prisoner for 10 weeks from February, March, April, in that 3-month period. And she tells the story, what she calls 20 removes, which for her is like they move from place to place. So we're going to read the complete narrative of the captivity and restoration of Mary Rowlandson, where she is beginning with her capture at her home, and then her sort of survival, her struggling to like eat and survive until she was finally traded back after about 10 or 11 weeks. And then we will take our first exam, and it will just cover Smith, Bradford, and Rowlandson. So that first exam just covers Smith, Bradford, and Rowlandson. The 1600s really is what we're covering there. And so that first exam will be on June 14th. That Wednesday, June 14th, will be the first exam. Then we will go through William Byrd, History of the Dividing Line. William Byrd owned the largest plantation in Virginia in the 1720s and 1730s. He also surveyed what becomes the state line between Virginia and North Carolina. We will read Hector St. John de Crevecoeur, Letters from an American Farmer, Letter 9, which is about Charleston, South Carolina, and slavery. And then the most famous letter from his book, which is letter 3, What is an American? De Crevecoeur was originally from France. He came to this country, lived in upstate New York, but traveled all over the American colonies, was held prisoner, believed as a suspected British spy for a couple of years during the American Revolution. Letter 3, What is an American, is his most famous letter because it is his sort of description and explanation about how Americans are not just, British or French people. They are a different breed of people. We will read a section from William Bartram's Travels of William Bartram. William Bartram explored an extensive part of the Southeast. He often started in either Savannah or Charleston. The part that we're going to read is his exploration around what is now Franklin, North Carolina, the Tennessee River, the Little Tennessee River, the most famous section from Travels from William Bartram, where he in a horse trade, he goes through several Native American villages, interacts with those Native Americans, but then also interacts with a horse trader who lives in the North Carolina woods, the mountains of western North Carolina. We will read Rip Van Winkle by Washington Irving, which is about Rip Van Winkle sleeping through the American Revolution. We will read the Slaughter of the Pigeons section from James Fenimore Cooper's The Pioneers. You may know James Fenimore Cooper from The Last of the Mohicans. The same main character from The Last of the Mohicans is in Slaughter of the Pigeons. And then we will read Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne. You may know Hawthorne from like The Scarlet Letter. Young Goodman Brown is a shorter version of that. And then we will have the second exam, and it will cover Byrd, De Crevecoeur, Bartram, Irving, Fenimore Cooper, and Hawthorne. None of the exams are cumulative. The first exam covers those first few writers. The second exam covers everything between exam 1 up to exam 2. Then we will deal with Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, the most famous slave narrative in American literature. We're going to read several chapters from that. We will read some Edgar Allan Poe, The Black Cat, The Cask of Amontillado, Mask of the Red Death, The Raven, and Annabel Lee. Then we're going to read a few chapters from what is generally understood to be, if there's a single greatest American novel, it is generally understood to be Moby Dick. We're going to read from the beginning of Moby Dick and then the last chapter of The Chase, the third day. Moby Dick is about a whaling expedition and this attempt to kill the great white whale, Moby Dick. It is sort of based on 2 different historical events. So we'll get through that. We will read from Henry David Thoreau's Walden, the next to last chapter, which is Spring. Thoreau's Walden is generally considered one of like the 8 or 10 greatest pieces of American literature. The Spring chapter is generally understood to be like the sort of climax of the whole book. It's about spring and the sort of the world coming back to life at the end of winter, the beginning of spring. We will read from Harriet Jacobs' Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. Harriet Jacobs was a slave in the northeastern coast of North Carolina. And she describes her life growing up as a slave. And then she eventually escapes and lives in New York, in upstate New York. And the book ends with her freedom being purchased by the person who she's living with in upstate New York. And then we will end the class with Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman, generally understood to be the 2 great American poets of the 1900s, pre-Civil War era. We'll read several of Dickinson's short poems, and then from Walt Whitman's longer Song of Myself sections. Song of Myself is about being an American and all the sort of diverse kinds of people you encounter in America and those kinds of things. And then the last day of class, July 26th, is devoted to us watching some sort of film. If this was an in-person class, most recently, I've shown several different films. I've shown Last of the Mohicans, if you know that film. I've most recently shown 7 Years a Slave, the Solomon Northup film about his experience. He was a free African-American in New York, but was captured and was spent 7 years as a slave in the South, especially in Louisiana, before he was then rescued. But the college doesn't have the rights to stream 12 Years a Slave anymore. And so we're going to have to be a little flexible about what film we watch and those kinds of things. I will figure that out and let you know. I may even give you several options of films to watch for July 26th as our last response paper option. The other thing that is important, you can see that on July 19th, the research paper is due. And then the final exam, let me go back to the exam for just a second. The final exam will be Friday, July 28th, which is the last day for classes for the summer semester. So those are the three exams. Friday, July 28th, June 26th, which is a Monday, and then Wednesday, June 14th. Those are the three fixed exam days. When I'll make an exam visible to you, you'll have a certain amount of time to do it and turn it back into me. The exams cover terminology, and then I give you, what I'll usually do is give you 4 or 5 terms, and you'll pick 2 or 3 of them and explain what the term is, what the concept is, and then give an example from something that we've read. So you'll define colonialism, and then you'll say, John Smith's book is an example of colonialism because. And then there's a second section that will give you some quotes from things that we've read. You'll have usually 4 or 5. You'll pick 2 and explain what's going on in that moment in the quote and why it's important to the larger story. So there's 2 parts to those. That tell me what's going on in the moment, explain why that moment's important to the whole story. Those are all the exams. They all follow that same format. And they're on those 3 fixed days, which you can see here. The research paper is due, you scroll back down here to July 19th. When we get into July, I'll give you more information about the research paper, but the basic guidelines for it, if you're interested in that, the basic guidelines for it are down here where it says research paper guidelines and information. There's a whole module about it in D2L. It's a short research paper, 900 to 1200 words. It's really only asking you to use 2 or 3 sources. It's a relatively short, small research assignment. But my suggestion to you is to get into the class for at least a couple of weeks, because then some of the research topics will make more sense to you. So don't think too hard or worry too much about the research paper until we get a week or 2 into the class and you start thinking about the different time periods that we're going to cover and things like that. The other assignments are the response topics. The way that this course is set up, there is a response topic for every author that we are going to read. And what I mean by that is there is a John Smith response topic. There is a William Bradford response topic. There's a Mary Rowlandson response topic. There's a William Byrd response topic. Those topics are visible to you within the weekly modules. For example, you can see in the first week, June 5th through the 9th, June 5th through the 9th, we're reading Smith, Bradford, and getting into Rowlandson. Well, you go over to that weekly module, you've got Smith, Bradford, and Rowlandson, and when you click on each of them, there are links to the required readings if you don't have the book and you need an online version of the reading. But under the readings is a response paper option. And this one says John Smith. It gives you a response paper topic. This one's about John Smith as being self-aggrandizing and inaccurate, that he sort of stretches the truth to make himself look good. And then some people see him as the savior of the Virginia colony and also friendly to the Native Americans in the way that the Pilgrims, the Puritans, were not. What is your perspective on Smith? It says the text is from June 5th. That's when on the syllabus, on the reading schedule, you would theoretically read this. If you want to write this response paper, that response is due June 8th. It should be around 550 words. If it's 510, that's fine. If it's 700, that's fine. It doesn't have to be exactly 550 words. That's just the general range you should aim for. And so what you will do, the way that you will do your 5 response papers over the course of the semester is you pick any 5 as we go through the semester. You want to do John Smith and get the first one out of the way? Fine. You don't understand John Smith and want to wait for something that you understand more clearly? Fine. Forget John Smith and think ahead. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You should have at least 15 options to get your 5 from. And what I mean by that is, if you look into each of the weeks, you will see just in this first week alone, you've got Smith, Bradford, and Rowlandson, and the Rowlandson paper isn't due until the next week. So you've got plenty of options to choose from. That is how you will get your 5 response papers, is as we go through the semester and go through the readings, you pick the response papers that you want to respond to, and you do those on the date that the response paper option lists them. The one kicker to that is, once a date is gone, you can't go back in time. Like, again, if you want to do the John Smith response, it says response paper due June 8th. Well, on June 9th, that option's gone. You can't go back to John Smith. All you can do is keep going forward and do the response papers as we go. So that gives you a sense of the response papers. Those are all the assignments for the course. You've got 5 response papers. You pick those as we go along, turn those in. You've got the 3 exams. Those are on the fixed days. Those are on the fixed days of Wednesday, June 14th, and then Monday, June 26th, and then the final exam is Friday, July 28th. So you've got those 3 fixed dates for the exams, and then the research paper is due July 19th. Those are the only fixed dates for this class for all summer semester, and that's all the work for the course. The 3 exams, the research paper, and the response paper. Those are the big grades for the course. That should give you a general sense of how the class will flow. Week by week, you will look at the reading and assignment schedule. You'll go into your weekly module, do your readings, decide if you want to do the response papers. There's some additional resources for each of these if you're interested in something and want to look at them. But what's required of you is to keep up with the readings, do those 3 exams and research paper on those specific dates they're due. And if those dates and times won't work for you, be in touch with me a little bit ahead of time, and we'll figure out some alternate time. And then do your 5 response papers as we roll through the summer and as we roll through the readings. I hope that gives you a good sense of the schedule. I will also, at least once a week, post an announcement, a video announcement for you that tells you in a quick and basic way what you need to do that week, what the readings are. If we've got an exam, I'm going to give you a review for that exam, and I'm also going to go through the important terms and concepts that will be on each of the exams. As we go week by week, I'll say, hey, we're reading John Smith, and captivity narrative's important to John Smith. Or, hey, we're reading Edgar Allan Poe, and the grotesque is important to Edgar Allan Poe, and here's how. Or when we're reading Douglass, I'll say Douglass is the most famous slave narrative. Here's the definition of slave narrative and what it is. That should give you a sense of the reading and assignment schedule, and that's how we're going to flow through week by week through the summer and through the summer semester. If you see this video and you have questions, you're confused about the response papers or about the exams, or you already know you're going to have some kind of scheduling conflict for the exams or something like that, that's fine. Just reach out and let me know, and we will figure that out. I hope this gives you a good sense of how the class is going to flow through the summer, and I hope you're looking forward for us going through this. Like, we're going to start in the early 1600s and go all the way to the 1850s and 1860s. So it's going to be like a 250-year journey, and I hope you're excited for that like I am. I haven't taught this class in a few years. This is the first time I've ever taught it online, so I'm really excited to go through this with you guys. And like I said, I haven't taught this in 4 years, so I'm excited to get reacquainted with some of these people like John Smith and Moby Dick and stuff like that. I hope this is helpful to you. Again, if you've got questions, please be in touch.